There are secrets in this world that eat at a man's soul until he can't carry them anymore. I've been carrying mine for 27 years. 27 years of watching people speculate, theorize, make documentaries, write books, all trying to figure out what happened to Tupac Shakur on September 7, 1996. I was there. I was in the driver's seat of that BMW when the bullets tore through the passenger side. I felt Pac's blood on my face. I heard his last words. And I know who killed him because years later the man responsible told me himself. His name is Duane Keefe D, and he confessed everything to me in a moment of arrogance and stupidity that he probably wishes he could take back now. But it's too late. I'm marrying Hugh Knight Jr., Suge Knight, co-founder of Death Row Records, the man who built an empire and watched it burn. And this is the truth about Pac's murder. Every word. No filter, no lies. Death Row Records was more than a label. It was a movement, a revolution in hip-hop that changed everything. We didn't just make music, we made history. Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Tupac Shakur, Nate Dogg, Dogg Pound. The biggest names in rap were all under one roof, and I was the one holding it all together. People feared me. They respected me. They knew that if you came at Death Row, you came at an army. And Pac understood that. When he signed with us in '95, fresh out of prison, he knew that Death Row was the only place powerful enough to protect him and amplify his message. We gave him the platform to become a legend. We gave him the protection he needed against his enemies. And for a while, everything was perfect. We were untouchable. We were kings. But in the streets, there's always someone waiting to take your crown. The beef between Death Row and Bad Boy Records wasn't some manufactured industry rivalry. It was real. It was deadly. It started over disrespect, over territory, over pride. Puff Daddy and Biggie represented the East Coast, we represented the West Coast, and Pac, after getting shot 5 times at Quad Studios in New York in '94, believed that Puff and Big had something to do with it. He believed they set him up. Whether that was true or not, I don't know for certain. But Pac believed it, and when Pac believed something, he went to war. He made songs attacking them, he made public statements, he declared war on Bad Boy, and we backed him. Because that's what Death Row did, we stood with our artists. We protected our family, but what none of us fully understood at the time was that this war would cost us everything. It would cost us Pac's life. And eventually Biggie's too. September 7th, 1996. That date is burned into my memory like a scar that never heals. We were in Las Vegas for the Mike Tyson versus Bruce Seldon fight at the MGM Grand. It was supposed to be a celebration. Tyson knocked Seldon out in the first round. We were all hyped, feeling invincible. After the fight, we were walking through the casino lobby when someone from our crew spotted Orlando Anderson, a South Side Crip from Compton. There had been beef with Orlando before. He was connected to some people who had jumped one of our Death Row bodyguards and stolen a Death Row chain. Pac saw him and immediately went after him. It turned into a brawl right there in the MGM. Security broke it up fast, but the damage was done. We should have known right then that retaliation was coming. In the streets, disrespect like that doesn't go unanswered. But we were caught up in the moment. We felt untouchable, and that arrogance cost us everything. After the fight and the altercation, we headed back to my house to change clothes before going to Club 662, a nightclub I owned. The plan was simple: get dressed, link up with the crew, and roll out in a convoy to the club. Pac was riding with me in my black BMW 7 Series. We didn't take security cars that night. We didn't roll heavy like we usually did. And that was our first mistake. We left the house around 10:30 p.m., heading down the strip toward the club. The energy was good. Pac was in high spirits when talking about new music, new plans. He was excited about the future. We stopped at a red light on Flamingo Road near K1ll Lane, and that's when everything changed. A white Cadillac pulled up on the passenger side. I didn't think anything of it at first. Then I saw the arm come out the window. And then I heard the shots. The sound of gunfire is something you never forget. It's loud, sharp, chaotic. I saw the muzzle flashes. I felt the car shaking from the impact of the bullets hitting metal and glass. Pac was right next to me, and I could see him getting hit. His body jerked from the impact. Blood started spraying. I tried to duck, tried to shield myself, but bullets were flying everywhere. One grazed my head. I could feel the burn, the sting, the warmth of blood running down my face, but my focus was on getting us out of there. I hit the gas, but the car was damaged. The tires were hit. We could barely move. I turned and saw Pac slumped over, bleeding heavily. He was conscious, but barely. He tried to speak, but I couldn't understand him. I was screaming for help, trying to keep control, trying to process what just happened. And all I could think was, they got him. They finally got him. We made it a few blocks before police and paramedics arrived. They pulled Pac out of the car and rushed him to University Medical Center. I was taken to the hospital too for my head wound, but I refused to leave until I knew Pac was okay. He went into surgery immediately. The doctors worked on him for hours. 4 bullets had hit him, 1 in the chest, 1 in the arm, 1 in the thigh, and 1 that punctured his lung. The damage was severe. For 6 days, Pac fought. He was in and out of consciousness. His body was trying to survive, but the damage was too much. On September 13, 1996, at 4:03 p.m., Tupac Shakur was pronounced dead. He was 25 years old. The greatest rapper who ever lived was gone. And I was the last person he spoke to, the last person he trusted to protect him. And I failed. The immediate aftermath was chaos. The police wanted answers. The media wanted answers. The streets wanted blood. But nobody was talking. That's the code. You don't cooperate with police, you handle things yourself. And I knew who did it. From the moment those shots were fired, I knew it was retaliation for the Orlando Anderson incident. I knew it was Southside Crips. I knew the white Cadillac belonged to them. And I was ready to go to war. But the police investigation went nowhere. They questioned me multiple times. They questioned everyone who was there. But nobody gave them anything useful. Orlando Anderson was questioned, but he denied involvement. There was no physical evidence tying anyone to the shooting. No weapon recovered. No witnesses willing to testify. The case went cold, and for years, it stayed cold. But the streets knew. We all knew. And eventually the truth started coming out. Little by little, piece by piece. Orlando Anderson died in '98, shot and killed in a gang-related shootout in Compton. He never faced charges for Pac's murder. But he wasn't the shooter. He was the motive. The real shooters were his uncle, Keefe D, and others in that Cadillac. Keefe D was the one who orchestrated it. He was the one who handed the gun to his nephew. He was the one who gave the order. And years later, in 2008, Keefe D himself admitted it. Not to the police at first, but in street conversations, in interviews, in his own quest for notoriety. He started telling people that he was in the car, that he knew who pulled the trigger, and eventually he told me, not directly at first, but through intermediaries, through people we both knew. And then, one day, face to face, he confirmed everything I already suspected. And that's when I knew the truth would eventually come out. Because men like Keefe D can't keep their mouths shut. Their egos are too big. Their need for respect and recognition is too strong. And that arrogance is what finally got him arrested. The conversation I had with Keefe D happened years after Pac's death. It was in the 2000s, during a time when I was trying to navigate a music industry that had changed drastically. Death Row was no longer the powerhouse it once was. I had legal troubles mounting, financial problems, personal problems. But I still had respect in the streets. People still knew my name, and Keefe D, trying to position himself as some kind of street legend, reached out through mutual associates. He wanted to sit down. He wanted to talk. And I agreed, not because I trusted him, but because I wanted to hear it from his own mouth. I wanted to hear him admit what he did. And he did. He sat across from me and laid it all out. He told me how they got the call about the MGM incident, how they armed themselves and went looking for us, how they spotted my BMW on the strip, how they pulled up alongside, how he handed the gun to someone in the back seat, and how they opened fire without hesitation. Keefe D told me that night wasn't personal against Pac specifically. It was about disrespect. It was about Orlando getting jumped. It was about pride and reputation. In gang culture, you can't let something like that slide. If someone from your set gets disrespected, you retaliate. That's the code, and they saw Pac and me as the targets because we were the most visible. We were the ones who represented death row. We were the ones who had to pay. Keefe D didn't express remorse. He didn't apologize. He talked about it like it was just business, like it was something that had to be done. And that coldness, that detachment made me realize something. To him, Pac wasn't a human being with dreams and family and talent. He was just a target. Just another body in a long war that had been going on for decades. And that realization made me hate him more than I ever thought possible. But I didn't retaliate, not in the way the streets expected me to. I could have. I had the resources, I had the connections, I could have made Keefe D disappear, but by that point I was already dealing with too much legal heat. The police were watching me constantly, the feds were building cases. I knew that if I made a move, it would come back on me. So I sat on the information, I kept it to myself. And I waited. I waited for Keefe D to make a mistake. Because men like him always do. They can't help themselves, and sure enough, in 2008 he did an interview with police as part of a proffer agreement for an unrelated case. And in that interview he admitted everything. He admitted being in the car, he admitted his role. He thought he was protected because of the agreement. He thought he was untouchable. But confessions like that don't just disappear, they sit in files, they get reviewed, and eventually they come back to haunt you. In 2023, almost 27 years after Pac's murder, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department finally arrested Duane Keith Davis and charged him with murder. They used his own words against him, his interviews, his book, his public statements where he bragged about his involvement. All of it came together to build a case. And when I heard the news, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. Not closure, because nothing will bring Pac back. But relief that finally someone was being held accountable. Keefe D is sitting in jail right now awaiting trial. He's facing life in prison and he deserves every second of it. Because he took away a genius. He took away a voice that the world needed. He took away my friend. And for what? For pride. For gang politics, for absolutely nothing of value. People ask me why I didn't speak out sooner, why I didn't go to the police with what I knew. And the answer is complicated. Part of it is the code. You don't snitch. You don't cooperate with law enforcement. That's how I was raised. That's the culture I came from. But part of it is also protection. If I had gone to the police back then, I would have been labeled a snitch. I would have been targeted. My family would have been in danger. And honestly, I didn't trust the system to do anything with the information anyway. The LVPD had botched the investigation from the beginning. They didn't secure the crime scene properly. They didn't follow up on leads. They treated it like just another gang shooting. And I knew that even if I gave them names, nothing would happen. So I stayed quiet, and I dealt with it in my own way, which was to keep Pac's legacy alive. To keep his music out there, to make sure the world never forgot who he was and what he represented. Death Row Records died with Pac. Not immediately, but the downfall started that night. Without Pac, we lost our biggest star. Without Pac, the energy shifted. Dr. Dre had already left. Snoop would eventually leave. The label became embroiled in lawsuits, financial problems, criminal investigations. And I became the target. The media painted me as a villain. The police wanted to pin everything on me. And eventually I lost everything. The label, the money, the power. I ended up in and out of prison on various charges. And now I'm sitting in a cell serving a 28-year sentence for voluntary manslaughter in an unrelated case from 2015. I'm 60 years old. I'll likely die in prison, but even from here I can still tell the truth. I can still set the record straight about what happened to Pac. Because he deserves that. The world deserves to know Pac's murder wasn't just a tragedy for hip-hop. It was a tragedy for culture, for art, for social justice. Pac was more than a rapper. He was a poet, an activist, a revolutionary. He spoke for the voiceless. He challenged the system. He made people think, and he was taken away before he could reach his full potential. Imagine what he could have accomplished if he had lived. Imagine the music he would have created, the films he would have made, the movements he would have inspired. All of that was stolen by violence, by gang culture, by a system that fails young black men every single day. And the people responsible have lived free for nearly 3 decades while Pac's mother, Afeni, died without seeing justice. While his fans have mourned and wondered and demanded answers that nobody would give. Until now. I want people to understand something important. Pac's death was preventable. If we had taken security more seriously that night, if we had left Vegas immediately after the MGM incident, if we had understood the danger we were in, he would still be alive. And I carry that guilt every day. I was supposed to protect him. I was the CEO. I was his friend. I was driving the car, and I couldn't save him. That failure haunts me. It's kept me awake countless nights. It's made me question every decision I made during that time. And there's nothing I can do to change it, nothing I can do to bring him back. All I can do is tell the truth, tell the world what really happened, make sure that Keefe D and everyone else involved are held accountable, and honor Pac's memory by never letting his story be forgotten or distorted. The hip-hop industry has changed drastically since Pac's death. It's become more corporate, more sanitized, more focused on money than message. The artists today don't have the same raw authenticity that Pac had. They don't take the same risks. They don't speak the same truths. And part of that is because of what happened to Pac and Big. Their death sent a message to the industry. This lifestyle is dangerous. This culture can kill you. And so the music became safer. The artists became more careful. And something essential was lost. We lost the rawness, the realness, the willingness to die for what you believe in. Pac was willing to die for his truth. And he did. And while I don't think violence is the answer, I do think his courage, his refusal to be silenced is something that should be remembered and honored. Keefe D's trial is ongoing as I write this. The legal process is slow. His lawyers are fighting the charges, claiming the statute of limitations has passed, claiming his confessions were coerced or misunderstood. But the evidence is there. His own words, his own admissions. Multiple interviews where he detailed his involvement. A book where he wrote about it. He put himself in that car. He admitted handing over the weapon. He admitted orchestrating the shooting. And now, he has to face the consequences. I hope he's convicted. I hope he spends the rest of his life in prison. Not because I believe in revenge, but because I believe in justice. Because Pac deserves justice. His family deserves justice. His fans deserve justice. And the culture deserves to see that actions have consequences, that you can't murder someone and brag about it for decades without eventually paying the price. From this cell where I'm confined, I think about Pac every day. I think about his laugh, his intensity, his passion. I think about the conversations we had about music, about the industry, about life. I think about the plans we made for the future of death row. All of it cut short by bullets fired from a white Cadillac on a Las Vegas street. And I think about Keefe D, sitting in his own cell now, finally facing what he did. I wonder if he has any regrets. I wonder if he thinks about Pac. I wonder if he understands the magnitude of what he took from the world. Probably not. Men like him don't think that deeply. They're driven by ego and pride and street politics that mean nothing in the grand scheme of things. They destroy lives and call it survival. They murder legends and call it necessary. And they live with themselves somehow until karma finally catches up. I'm not asking for sympathy. I've made my own mistakes. I've hurt people. I've made decisions I regret. I've contributed to a culture of violence that I now see was destructive, and I'm paying for that. But I want my story, Pac's story, to serve as a warning. To young people coming up in the streets, in the industry, and gang culture. This life leads nowhere good. The money, the power, the respect. It's all temporary. What's permanent is the pain you cause, the lives you destroy, the legacy you leave behind. Pac left behind music that will live forever. What will Keefe D leave behind? A confession to murder. That's his legacy. That's what he'll be remembered for, and that's exactly what he deserves. The truth about Pac's murder is finally coming out. Not because the system worked, but because Keefe D couldn't keep his mouth shut. Because his ego demanded recognition. Because he wanted to be known as the man who killed Tupac Shakur. And now he's getting exactly what he wanted. Everyone knows his name. Everyone knows what he did. And everyone will watch as he's held accountable. This is my confession. This is my testimony. This is everything I know about that night and everything that came after. I was there when Pac died. I heard Keefe D admit to killing him. And now the world knows the truth. May Pac rest in peace. May justice finally be served. And may we all learn from this tragedy that violence only breeds more violence, and that the only way forward is through truth, accountability, and change. Pac once said in a song that he wasn't afraid to die, that he saw death as a part of life, that he lived every day like it might be his last. And in a way, that's exactly what he did. He lived fully, fearlessly, unapologetically. He made music that mattered. He spoke truths that needed to be heard. And even though his life was cut short, his impact was immense. He changed hip-hop forever. He changed culture forever, and his voice still echoes today, 27 years later. That's immortality, that's legacy, and no bullet, no gang, no street politics can take that away. Keefe D took Pac's physical life, but he couldn't take his spirit. He couldn't silence his message, and that's the ultimate irony. Pac won. His truth outlived the violence, his art outlived the hatred, and his legacy will outlive all of us, including me, including Keefe D, including everyone who tried to destroy him. I know my time is limited. I'm getting older. My health isn't what it used to be, and I'm facing the reality that I'll probably die in prison. But before I go, I needed to tell this story. I needed to set the record straight. I needed to honor Pac's memory by finally revealing everything I know about his murder. This isn't about me. This isn't about redemption or forgiveness. This is about truth. This is about making sure that history remembers what really happened. That Pac was murdered by cowards who ambushed him in the streets. That the man responsible, Keefe D, bragged about it for years. That the system failed to bring justice for nearly 3 decades, and that finally, accountability is coming. This is my gift to Pac. This is my way of saying I'm sorry I couldn't protect you that night. But I can protect your legacy now. I can make sure the truth is told. And that's exactly what I'm doing. Rest in power, Tupac Shakur. The world will never forget you, and neither will I. There are details about that night that I've never shared publicly. Details that the police reports don't mention. Details that even the closest people to me don't know. When those bullets started flying, time slowed down in a way I can't fully explain. I saw everything. The muzzle flashes, the shell casings ejecting, the glass shattering. Pac's body jerking from the impact. And in that moment, I made a decision that haunts me to this day. I could have swerved left into traffic, trying to get away faster, but I was worried about hitting other cars, causing more chaos. I could have reversed, backing away from the Cadillac, but my mind was frozen, processing too much information at once. Instead, I hit the gas and tried to go forward, but the car was already damaged. The tires were shot out. We limped forward maybe 100 yards before I had to stop. And in those critical seconds, while I was trying to figure out what to do, Pac was bleeding out next to me. Every second mattered, and I wasted precious seconds being in shock. When the paramedics arrived, they pulled Pac out through the passenger door because it was less damaged than my side. I watched them lay him on the stretcher. His eyes were open but unfocused. Blood was everywhere, on his clothes, on the seat, on me. They worked fast, cutting his shirt open, checking his vitals, trying to stabilize him. I kept telling them to hurry, to save him, that he couldn't die. But they weren't listening to me. They were focused on their job. One of the paramedics looked at me and said I was bleeding too. I touched my head and felt the warm wetness. A bullet had grazed my skull. Another inch to the left and I would have been dead too, but I didn't care about myself in that moment. I only cared about Pac. I rode in the ambulance with him, holding his hand, telling him to fight, telling him we had too much work left to do, telling him the world needed him. And he squeezed my hand once, just once. That was the last communication we had. At the hospital, they separated us immediately. Pac went straight to surgery. I was taken to another area to get my head wound treated. The police showed up within minutes. Detectives, uniformed officers, everyone wanting answers. They asked me what happened, who shot us, where the shots came from. If I saw the shooter, if I knew who was in the Cadillac. And I told them I didn't see anything, that it happened too fast, that I was focused on driving. That's the answer I gave then, and it's the answer I stuck with for years. Not because it was true, but because I knew that if I identified the shooters, two things would happen. First, I'd be labeled a snitch, and my credibility in the streets would be destroyed. Second, the people who shot us would come after me and everyone I cared about to eliminate the witness. So I stayed quiet. I let the detectives get frustrated. I let them think I was uncooperative, and I handled it the street way. The days Pac spent in the hospital were torture. I stayed as close as they would let me. His family came. Afeni, his mother, was there constantly, praying over him, talking to him. His friends from the industry came, some genuine, some just there for the spectacle. The media camped outside the hospital, reporting every update, speculating about who did it and why. And inside, Pac fought. His body was trying to heal, but the damage was too severe. One bullet had hit his lung, causing it to collapse. Another had gone through his pelvis. The doctors induced a coma to give his body a chance to recover. But on September 13th, his heart gave out. They tried to resuscitate him, but it was over. When Afeni came out of the room and I saw her face, I knew. I knew before she said the words. Pac was gone, and a part of me died with him that day. A part I never got back. The funeral was private, but the public mourning was massive. Thousands of fans gathered in Los Angeles. Murals went up overnight. Vigils were held across the country. The entire hip-hop community was in shock. Pac had been so alive, so vibrant, so full of energy just days before, and now he was gone, at 25 years old, with so much left to say and do. The injustice of it all was overwhelming. And what made it worse was knowing that the people responsible were walking free, that they were probably celebrating, that they had succeeded in taking out one of the most important voices of our generation. And there was nothing I could do about it immediately. I had to play it smart. I had to wait. I had to let them think they got away with it. Because revenge is a dish best served cold. And I was willing to wait as long as it took. In the weeks and months after Pac's death, Death Row tried to continue. We released his album, The Don Killuminati, The 7-Day Theory, which he had recorded under the name Machiavelli just before he died. The album was dark, prophetic, haunting. Pac had recorded it knowing that his life was in danger. You could hear it in his voice, in his lyrics. He knew death was coming. He just didn't know when or how. The album was a massive success commercially, but it felt hollow, because Pac wasn't here to see it. He wasn't here to perform the songs, to do interviews, to defend his art. And the media started spinning narratives. Some said Pac's death was his own fault for living a violent lifestyle. Others said it was gang-related and inevitable. Very few talked about the systemic issues that created the environment where a young black man could be murdered in the street and no one would be held accountable for decades. The investigation into Pac's murder was a joke from the beginning. The Las Vegas Police Department had a reputation for not taking gang-related crimes seriously, especially when they involved out-of-towners. They treated Pac's murder like just another statistic. They didn't secure the crime scene properly. They didn't canvass the area for witnesses thoroughly. They didn't follow up on obvious leads. And when they questioned me and others from our crew, they were hostile and accusatory, as if we were the criminals instead of the victims. That approach guaranteed that no one would cooperate with them. You can't treat people like suspects and then expect them to help you solve the crime. And so the case went cold. Not because there was no evidence, but because the police failed to do their job properly. They failed Pac. They failed his family. They failed justice. Orlando Anderson, the guy we fought at the MGM, became the prime suspect in the media and in the streets. Everyone knew he was connected to it. But the police couldn't make a case stick. They questioned him multiple times. He denied everything. His lawyers protected him. And without physical evidence or cooperating witnesses, there was nothing they could do. Orlando lived for 2 more years after Pac's death. In May of 1998, he was shot and killed in a gang shootout outside a car wash in Compton. He was 23 years old. Some people said his death was karma. Some said it was retaliation from Pac's people. I don't know the truth of why he was killed, but I do know that his death meant the police could close their file on him as a suspect. They could say the main perpetrator was dead and move on. But Orlando wasn't the mastermind. He was just the excuse. The real architect of Pac's murder was his uncle, Keefe D. And Keefe D lived free for another 25 years. Keefe D's arrogance is what ultimately brought him down. After Orlando died, Keefe started talking more openly about the night Pac was killed. At first, it was just street rumors. People saying he was bragging about his involvement in barbershops, at parties, and prison yards. Then in 2008, he did a formal interview with police as part of a proffer agreement. He thought he was protected. He thought that by cooperating on an unrelated drug case, he could confess to Pac's murder without facing charges. And technically, at that time, he was right. The proffer agreement meant his statements couldn't be used against him directly. But what he didn't understand is that those statements could be used to corroborate other evidence. They could be used to build a timeline. They could be used to verify witness accounts. And when he later wrote a book and did interviews publicly repeating the same story, he invalidated his immunity. He put himself in legal jeopardy, and he was too arrogant to realize it. In 2018, Keefe D did an interview for a documentary where he went into explicit detail about the murder. He described how they got the guns, how they drove around looking for us, how they spotted my BMW on the strip, how he was sitting in the front passenger seat of the Cadillac and handed the gun back to someone in the rear seat. He didn't specifically say who pulled the trigger, but he admitted his role in planning and facilitating the murder. That interview was a gift to prosecutors. It was a confession on camera. And when combined with his previous statements, his book, and other evidence, it gave the Las Vegas district attorney enough to finally file charges. In September 2023, almost exactly 27 years after Pac's murder, Keefe D was arrested at his home and charged with murder with use of a deadly weapon. Watching that news broke something open inside me. Finally, after all these years, someone was being held accountable. The conversation I had with Keefe D that I mentioned earlier happened around 2009, about a year after his proffer interview with police. Word had gotten back to me through mutual associates that Keefe was telling people he wanted to sit down with me. He wanted to clear the air, or so he claimed. I was skeptical, but I was also curious. I wanted to hear from his own mouth what he had done and why. So I agreed to meet him at a neutral location in Los Angeles, a place where both of us felt safe enough to talk. He came alone, which surprised me. I had 2 of my guys with me, but I told them to stay back. This was a conversation I needed to have one-on-one. When Keefe walked in, he had this smug look on his face, like he was proud of what he'd done, like he thought I would respect him for it. And that's when I knew this wasn't going to be a reconciliation. This was going to be a confession. Keefe sat down across from me and started talking like we were old friends. He asked about my legal troubles, about the state of death row, about the industry. And I played along for a few minutes, letting him feel comfortable. Then I asked him directly about Pac. I said I heard he had been running his mouth, that he had been telling people he was involved. And instead of denying it, instead of getting defensive, he leaned back and smiled. He said that Pac's death was nothing personal, that it was just business. That when Orlando got jumped at the MGM, they had no choice but to respond, that in the streets you can't let disrespect go unanswered. And he said that when they saw my BMW on the strip that night, they knew what they had to do. He talked about it so casually, like he was describing a business transaction. No remorse, no regret, just cold calculation. And that's when I realized he was a sociopath. He had no empathy, no understanding of the magnitude of what he'd done. I asked him who pulled the trigger. He hesitated at first, then said it was his nephew, Orlando. That Orlando was in the back seat and he was the one who fired the shots. Keefe claimed he was just the driver, just the facilitator. But under the law, it doesn't matter. If you're part of a conspiracy to commit murder, you're just as guilty as the person who pulls the trigger. And Keefe was definitely part of the conspiracy. He admitted obtaining the gun. He admitted being in the car. He admitted identifying the target. He admitted everything except feeling bad about it. And as he talked, I had to control my rage. I wanted to reach across that table and choke the life out of him. I wanted to make him suffer the way Pac suffered. But I knew that would only land me back in prison, so I stayed calm. I listened. I let him finish. And when he was done, I told him that one day he would pay for what he did. That karma always comes around. He laughed it off. But I meant every word. And now, 14 years later, karma has arrived. Keefe D is currently being held without bail in Clark County Detention Center in Las Vegas. His trial has been delayed multiple times due to legal maneuvering by his defense team. They're arguing that too much time has passed, that the statute of limitations should apply, that his confessions were made under duress or were exaggerated for entertainment purposes. But the prosecution has a strong case. They have his multiple confessions on record. They have corroborating testimony from other witnesses. They have forensic evidence from the crime scene that matches his account. And they have the law on their side because in Nevada there's no statute of limitations for murder. Keefe D thought he was untouchable. He thought that by bragging about killing Pac, he would gain street credibility and notoriety. Instead, he gave prosecutors everything they needed to lock him up for the rest of his life. And that's exactly what should happen. He should die in prison just like Pac died on that street. The impact of Pac's death on hip-hop culture cannot be overstated. After he was killed, the entire industry changed. Artists became more cautious. Labels implemented stricter security protocols. The East Coast versus West Coast rivalry that had been escalating for years suddenly felt dangerous and real in a way it hadn't before. And then, 6 months later, when Biggie was killed in Los Angeles in March of 1997, it confirmed everyone's worst fears. The violence wasn't just talk. It wasn't just entertainment. It was real and it was deadly. Two of the greatest rappers of all time, both under 30 years old, both murdered within 6 months of each other. And the message it sent to young artists was clear. Be careful what you say. Be careful who you beef with because this can cost you your life. The music became less confrontational, less raw, more commercial. And while that might have saved lives, it also neutered the art form. Hip-hop lost its edge, its danger, its willingness to speak uncomfortable truths. Afeni Shakur, Pac's mother, spent the rest of her life fighting for justice for her son. She established the Tupac Shakur Foundation to support arts programs for young people. She oversaw the release of multiple posthumous albums, keeping Pac's music and message alive. She fought legal battles to regain control of his estate and his legacy. And she never stopped demanding that the police find and prosecute whoever killed her son. Afeni died in May 2016, at the age of 69, without ever seeing anyone arrested for Pac's murder. That breaks my heart. She deserved to see justice. She deserved to see Keefe D in handcuffs. She deserved to hear a jury say guilty, but she died still waiting, still hoping, still believing that one day the truth would come out. And now that it finally has, I wish she was here to see it. I wish she could know that her son's killer is finally facing consequences, but at least her legacy lives on through the foundation and through Pac's music, and that's something. From where I sit now in this prison cell where I've spent years and will spend many more, I've had time to reflect on everything. On the choices I made, on the culture I helped create, on the violence that I enabled and participated in. And I've come to understand that we were all part of a cycle of poverty, of limited opportunities, of systemic racism, of glorified violence, of toxic masculinity. We grew up in environments where strength was measured by how much fear you could instill in others, where respect came from violence, where loyalty was enforced through intimidation, and we brought that mentality into the music industry. We brought it into death row. And it destroyed us. It destroyed Pac. It destroyed Biggie. It destroyed countless others whose names you don't know because they weren't famous. And it continues to destroy young men today who think the gangster lifestyle is glamorous or honorable. It's not. It's a trap. It's a dead end. And I wish I could go back and do things differently, but I can't go back. All I can do is tell the truth from here. Tell young people who look up to that era, who romanticize death row and the 90s hip-hop scene, that behind the platinum albums and the fancy cars and the tough image was a lot of pain, fear, and death. Pac didn't want to die. He wanted to live, to create, to change the world. And he was robbed of that chance by people who valued pride and gang politics over human life. And those same values are still destroying communities today. Still filling prisons, still filling cemeteries. And until we break that cycle, until we teach young men that there are better ways to gain respect and build legacies, nothing will change. Pac's death will have been meaningless, and I refuse to let that happen. I refuse to let his story be just another cautionary tale that people ignore. It has to mean something. It has to inspire change, and that's why I'm telling this story now, in full, holding nothing back. This confession, this testimony is my final contribution to Pac's legacy. I can't bring him back. I can't undo the past. But I can make sure that the truth is known, that Keefe D is held accountable, that the world understands what really happened, and that hopefully someone out there learns from our mistakes. Someone chooses a different path. Someone breaks the cycle. That would be the ultimate tribute to Pac. Not another mural, not another tribute concert, but real change, real evolution, real growth in how we handle conflict, how we build communities, how we define masculinity and strength. Pac was trying to evolve. He was trying to move beyond the thug image to become a leader, a teacher, a revolutionary. And if his death can inspire others to complete that evolution, then maybe, just maybe, it wasn't completely in vain. That's what I tell myself on the hard days. That's what keeps me going. The hope that this story matters, that this truth matters, that Pac's life and death can still change the world, even 27 years later.